Good afternoon again, everybody. My name is Allison Warner. I'm the Executive Director of the River Alliance of Wisconsin. So glad to have you all join us here today to get a little background on the great work you have been supporting this year and for many years. And to also, our plan today is to share a little bit about what we are planning for next year and beyond for River Alliance and protecting the waters of Wisconsin. Um, I want to thank you again all for joining us. I see in the list here and in our registration all sorts of great folks. We have some River Alliance board members. All of our staff, of course, is here today. Many of you are funders and supporters of River Alliance, and we are so grateful for your support and dedication to protecting the waters of Wisconsin. Um, we can't do this work alone, and especially without you all. The photo here, I just want to give a quick shout out. That is our board of directors and some of our staff at a board meeting last summer that our board member Ron Shep hosted on his farm. And that is a rainfall simulator to take a look at how different types of soil hold water and to make the case for having some good land use practices, things like cover crops and such that some of you may be familiar with. It was a lovely day out on Ron's farm last summer. As I mentioned, today we want to start by celebrating the work you and all of our supporters across the state have advanced, and then share with you our plans for protecting water for next year and beyond. We know the political climate is going to bring some challenges for us and others working to protect our environment and our waters. But we also know, as always, that working in community and collaboratively is an effective way to navigate challenging times. We've been here before. We have some experience in navigating times like this. And we know what we need to do, what we need to focus on is supporting the people and communities most at risk, and of course, to protect the water that's essential to all of us. Uh, Again, as an organization that's been around for over 30 years, we've navigated all sorts of challenging times and worked in all sorts of political climates and with different types of government before. We know defense will be a place we're going to be for some things, like making sure we have the laws we need to protect our waters. Uh, but we also know from experience that Wisconsinites of all political stripes care about clean water. We saw this when we did our Clean Water Now referendum campaign in the past, and we see it over and over again that the people most impacted by water pollution have used their stories and voices to demand clean water. Again, all across the state and all communities, we know clean water is an important issue. Today, you're going to hear from our amazing staff team about opportunities where you can take action at the local level. We've felt very strongly for all of our decades as an organization that the most impactful work happens on the local level. And the River Alliance team is going to continue to provide you, our local water protection organizations, and our partners, guidance, training, and support to protect all of Wisconsin's waters. We've been committed to this work for decades, and the political climate we're expecting is only going to make this work more important and necessary. And we are ready to roll up our sleeves as usual and get going to work on that local level. Excuse me. The environmental work, a lot of our success often takes many years and sometimes even decades to show the success. This work often takes the long haul. And one of the examples we have for the long haul is something that happened this year that actually began in 1994. And that is the Pine Dam up in Northeast Wisconsin. We have been part of an effort there to advocate for the removal of that hydropower dam, again, since 1994. Our founding executive director, Sarah Johnson, and many partners were involved with creating the Wilderness Shores Settlement Agreement, which was signed in 1997. And in this agreement, We Energies agreed to remove the Pine Dam in 2025. It was supposed to come out next year. So obviously, with all these years involved, there's a lot of details, a long saga, but the long story short is thanks to some legal action, a second settlement agreement was just put in place, and We Energies has agreed to permanently cease electric generating activities on the Pine project starting July 1st, 2038. And while we would have preferred this dam to come out next year, we're grateful for all the partners that pushed with us to make sure the original agreement from 1997 was adhered to. And the process to begin with the removal of that dam will actually begin in 2028. So this is a long, long process. And again, the long haul is what's needed from groups like us and our partners. And what will happen once this project is removed is we're going to, obviously get a free-flowing river back for the Pine River, but it's also going to cover 2 8-foot and 1 12-foot waterfalls, and a half-mile of rapids and high-quality trout habitat will be restored. So again, we know the work to protect our environment and the waters of Wisconsin is long-term. And it's going to take all of us, again, rolling up our sleeves, working together, working in partnership to protect the waters of Wisconsin. I'm now going to turn it over to our team members to share a bit about their work. And again, you'll have an opportunity to type your questions in the chat, and also we'll discuss these with us after all of the presentations have finished. But we're going to start with Ellen Voss, our Climate Resilience Director. She's going to update you about the connection between climate resilience and our work on dams. So Ellen, please take it away.
It sounds good. Hi there, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for the great introduction, Allison. As she said, I'm Ellen Voss, and I wanted to start out today just by unpacking what we mean by climate resilience, since that term has become a little bit of a buzzword. So at River Alliance, when we say climate resilience, we're talking about specific strategies that can practically help communities prepare, respond, recover, and adapt to the impacts of a changing climate. In the research we've done and conversations we've had over the past year and a half, it's become really clear that the role for River Alliance in this space involves circling back to some of the guiding principles that founded this organization over 30 years ago, specifically, as Allison spoke to a little bit ago, dams. In the beginning, the original impetus behind advocating for dam removal was primarily recreation and river health. But the immediate dangers posed by extreme storm events have shifted the priority to dam safety, liability, and flooding. Climate change is bringing more frequent, more intense storms to Wisconsin, and dams that were sometimes built over 100 years ago are no longer up to the challenge. Over and over again, what we're seeing in Wisconsin and regionally is that we're one bad storm away from potential disaster. We saw it in 2018, where 5 flood control dams failed in one storm event. And we saw it just last summer when the community of Manawa was dealing with flooding as their dam breached after a storm event as well. Our role will be helping communities have those hard conversations about the pros and cons of having a dam in their community and advocating for the value of nature-based solutions as a cost-effective alternative. We also recognize that not all dams are candidates for removal, and responsible hydro will continue to play a role in the energy grid. And to that end, we continue to take advantage of once-in-a-lifetime relicensing opportunities to advocate for things like habitat restoration, fish passage, recreational opportunities, and minimum flows. Minimum flows are especially important for what you see on the screen there. In that bottom left photo, that's me holding a bunch of different mussel species out of the lower Wisconsin River. And the upper photo is a screenshot from some PBS coverage that we got around that effort back in 2023 when drought and hydro led to the stranding of thousands of mussels along the lower Wisconsin. Excuse me. We also participate in settlement agreement implementation teams. Like Allison mentioned, the Wilderness Shore Settlement Agreement is a good example of that, where we manage and allocate settlement funds for natural resource projects and studies to determine what the true impacts of these hydro facilities are on river life. Excuse excuse me. We also know that habitats are more resilient to the impacts of climate change if they're free from invasive species. So over the years, there's been a major focus placed on the role of motorized boats in spreading invasives, but much less attention has been paid to canoers and kayakers who have the potential to access not only just major water bodies, but also smaller, more isolated landscapes. So as you probably know, this was a major program area for River Alliance for many years, but we're limiting our scope and focusing our efforts on educating the paddling community with our regional and national partners. And finally, this October, I was part of a statewide collaborative effort to bring attention to the underappreciated breadth of non-target impacts posed by neonicotinoids. These are pesticides that are used really heavily in Wisconsin agriculture. You might recognize them from the seed coating that is found in corn and soy. They're being found now in our surface and our groundwater, and educating the public was a really big first step of this forum. We're going to continue to advocate for the responsible regulation of these pesticides that protects our water and our biome. That does it for me. Next up, we have Michael Taboris, who is our Agriculture and Water Policy Director.
Thanks, Ellen. I'm going to speak a little bit about our work on agricultural issues in Wisconsin. Agriculture continues to be a significant challenge for Wisconsin's environmental and public health when it comes to our water. Farmers' knowledge of conservation methods and opportunities have shown real growth in the last few years, but progress on adoption and outcomes continues to be pretty slow because the problems that got us here are structural. It took a long time to create, and they'll likely take a long time for us to change. But that change is necessary and it's urgent. And we think that the best way to move forward is to work alongside the farm community to make that change and to make it at a fairly local level, because that's the best shot we have to make improvements in agricultural water quality irreversible over time. Whatever roadblocks we have at the federal level or in the state level in the next coming years, local action by local communities, by people who have a hand on the land, remains the most effective and durable form of change for the better. Farmers can have a direct impact on what happens to our land and our water, and they see stewardship often as essential to what they do. And if we can treat that as a central feature of what agriculture does in the state, then farming becomes an engine for water protection. So this animates the way that we approach these issues, and our focus is very much on taking action now to improve agricultural water impacts over the coming years. We recognize that the existing mechanisms for enforcement and voluntary compliance are just incapable of meeting our environmental and public health goals as we've set them. So responsibility for that change has to be broadened. It has to include the entire food system. Demands that production, processing, consumption, and disposal put on the way that we farm impact water quality. And if we can broaden out the way that we think about those areas of policy change, then we have a better shot at improving the way that farms interact with water and the land. The Wisconsin Agriculture Agenda that River Alliance started last year is the basis for our policy attitudes about this. We gathered experience and expertise from across the entire food system to identify key policy areas where action could be taken to improve the food system's impacts on water. And we came up with a great list of novel policy areas that we haven't worked in, but that others are working in. These included things like changes to crop insurance, farm finance, purchasing, land access, food waste management, and more. And you can find out more about this stuff on our website. We have a page for the Wisconsin Agriculture Agenda that you can explore. The purpose of doing this was to form a basis for a new policy agenda that improved water quality outcomes. And for some of the areas in the agenda, we're highlighting and supporting the great work done by others as part of our own policy advocacy agenda. And in some areas, we're taking on new programs ourselves. And for instance, we're now building a program on farm finance, where we're designing trainings to bring lenders and conservation professionals together to co-educate and to develop new conservation lending opportunities that will extend and advance our ability to do more conservation on the land. In this photo here, you can see one of the many events that we've done on farms over the last few years. This is where is this one? I can't remember what this one is. It might be Rachel Baressa's farm. We had a great event at Rachel Baressa's farm this year. She's newest member of the Natural Resources Board. But we continue to field an increasing number of requests from farmer-led groups and watershed groups to help them transition from just cost share grantees to full-fledged watershed organizations. And that's permanent structural change of the sort that has to happen at a local level, and that needs our technical expertise as an organization. We're getting requests from farm groups throughout the state to do that work, and they're very grateful for it. Finally, I just want to mention that our policy leadership in this space is getting recognized. We're participating in the UW system's nearly $160 million NSF grant proposal to build a regional economic engine around sustainable agriculture in Wisconsin. And we're the only non-UW organization specifically asked to play a leadership role in the grant's development, which kind of shows, I think, that a lot of the work that we've done has gotten attention, and there's a lot more to come there. I'm going to hand it off to Johnson now, our climate advocates organizer, who's going to talk about mining, among other things.
Hey everybody. So I'm Johnson Bridgewater. I'm the River Alliance Water Advocates organizer, and I essentially work towards our mission to empower people to protect and restore water at the local, state, and regional level. It's my job to bring people together to tackle local issues, to aid them in their growth as organizers, also to help organizations figure out how to not just work on their quote unquote capacity, but specifically address their capacity for doing advocacy work, having a greater understanding of what that work is. And that includes not just lobbying, there are lots of other forms. It also includes issues of justice that River Alliance is absolutely dedicated and committed to. The capacity work's coupled with several specific on-the-ground advocacy efforts that fill up most of my time. A lot of them fall into kind of two buckets, one of them being metallic sulfide mining specifically in water-rich regions like northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, and the UP of Michigan. These are areas where the mining is metallic sulfide mining. And I say that pointed out because that is a completely distinct issue from other forms of mining. There has never been a metallic sulfide mine opened in this three-state region that has not led to water contamination. So that's really critical to think about. One of the things that I'm really excited about with on the ground is we are starting to work with Manoomin, and depending where you are from, possibly Monoman. Most of you know this as wild rice. All of us here at River Alliance participate in timely issues as well as they emerge. One specific moment I'll mention. So I participate in the Line 5 Coalition, which some of you may know a little bit about. So back to mining, though, on the specifics. Mining opposition at River Alliance has always been science and fact-based. We have a mining update newsletter. We would love for you to go over to. You'll hear a few mentions of some of the things we have on our website, but you can head there to sign up for our mining updates. It's been a part of River Alliance for a couple decades. The work that we do at the local, state, and now I am happy to say regional level to address mining concerns. We participate in monthly state-based coalition calls, regional outreach with neighboring allies and tribes and organizations. We work on mine-specific actions. A couple of examples of these are bird dogging, Michigan eagle on the Copperwood mine because of its potential impact to both ceded territories and Lake Superior, which is absolutely connected to Wisconsin. And then we're also happy to say, following Back 40 mine, bird dogging on that as well. That has been absolutely quiet, and happy to say Gold Resource Corporation, separate discussion, but they're on the verge of financial failure. So this is what we do, though. We hound it and follow it and work with as many partners as possible to hold it at bay. Unfortunately, we do not often work on federal issues, but given the Biden administration's federal push to expand domestic mining, being coupled with recent election results, we fully expect that we are going to remain in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and UP and Michigan will remain in the bullseye for pursuit of mining, and federal government is absolutely a piece of that. We're also closely following the issue of critical minerals, specifically as it relates to copper. And again, I'm pointing something this minute and specific out because if they manage to get copper redesignated as a critical mineral, which it is not, that's going to open up vast funding pots of federal money. So all of the copper deposits, even though they're tiny and uneconomically viable, that federal money would make them economically viable. And unfortunately, our deposits that are currently being looked into, the Bend deposit and Reef deposit, both have copper elements, which would make them eligible. One of the problems with the federal issue also is, and these are not my words, these are from a lot of interviews and discussions that have been had, federal policy has been shoved down indigenous communities across the United States who are in almost 9 out of 10 mining areas of interest are adjacent or part of tribal lands. So this is really important to think about. And as part of that, right here in both Minnesota and the UP of Michigan, the federal government is already, through the Department of Defense, paying to pursue exploration mining and is doing it in both the UP of Michigan and Minnesota, again, which is why we are focused on building out a regional effort related to this. Most recent mining issue relates to wild rice, actually, and it's the issue of sulfates. And out of all of this, came the birth of what we're going to call Manoomin stewards for now. I may have a better name a little bit down the path, but so this is actually growth out of our work with tribes and our work with mining issues and our respect for all living things. It has now been proven that not just metallic sulfide mining, but taconite mining as well is having detrimental effects and impacts on wild rice, and they are now studying and have tracked this down to sulfate issues, which always arise with mining in our water-rich regions. So Mining Stewards program just is getting started. We had our initial planning meetings at Glyphwick recently. We will resume those meetings in January, and we'll be working towards what we would call a culturally trained rice steward program. And they'll do things as diverse as gather data for Glyphwick. That's already been discussed. They'll hold and do presentations at the library, for example. And the big piece of this is it's going to not just be a gather data and submit it. This program is going to work closely with some elders and tribal ricers to develop cultural understanding of all that goes into wild rice. So a little teaser there. And if you happen to live, we're actually starting way over in the in the northeast part of the state, but we will be starting in 2025 doing outreach to find potential Manoomin stewards. So if you're interested up in Florence and around those counties, give us a shout. I'd like to also mention, really happy to be able to work with Kathy Smith at Glyphwick. Have a really great story that Stacy did is up on our website if you have not read that yet. She is an amazing human being, and I think she represents a vision of, I think I could safely say all of us on the staff can relate to pretty heavily. So thanks, and I will be remiss if I don't get back to the heart of my job, which is advocacy and capacity. We are also having an executive leaders retreat and training next March. Our event will be March 25th, but it will be part of the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers, March 25th through the 28th. We have almost our entire staff will be presenting there. So we would love to have you all come for all or some of that event as well. And I will kick it over to my colleague, Bill Davis now.
Thanks, Johnson. Hi, all. I'm Bill Davis. I'm the Senior Legal Analyst here at the River Alliance. I'm going to be chatting about 3 parts of the work that I do. I'm going to start with work that we have been doing on PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, for those of you who've seen that phrase. And two of the folks that we work with are pictured in this slide, Cindy Boyle from Peshtigo and Tom Killian from Wausau. It's an awesome coalition that's come together to work on PFAS, and there are also a couple folks on the call that are part of that. Cheryl Lynn and Eric Wimpala, and maybe others. I'm caught up with who all's on the call. But it's a great coalition because it spans everything from folks that are living in affected communities and having to deal with PFAS pollution every day. We have folks in that coalition who haven't been able to use the water in their house for 7 years because of PFAS pollution. The work that coalition is undertaking is multifaceted. It's everything from trying to get our DNR to promulgate rules, particularly for groundwater standards, because that's what would be most helpful for folks that are on private wells. But we also are working on legislation, some of it to allow those rules to go forward, but also things like trying to get the legislature to release the $125 million that they set aside in the last budget, which they still haven't done, and then a whole range of more proactive legislation, taking a page from what some other states have done, including Minnesota, to specifically try and phase out non-essential uses of PFAS. So that is, there are a lot of different strategies, obviously, that go into the various different pieces of this. And like I said, given the experience within the coalition, we can do that because we've got lawyers like me and the folks from MEA, and then the organizing power of some of our other statewide organizations in the local affected communities. So that's a lot of what I do. The other part, another thing that I'm going to chat about is litigation. While we don't often bring suits ourselves, I certainly keep an eye on litigation that is ongoing that's important to water issues, and particularly any issues that we think are going to have a broad-based impact on the waters of Wisconsin. And I don't mean that in the legal phrase, by the way. And two that I'm going to mention. One is the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce several years ago brought a challenge to Wisconsin's spills law. For those of you who don't know, the spills law has been around for almost 47 years. And it is a real bulwark in protecting Wisconsin's waters. And it requires anybody who has a spill of any hazardous substance to report that spill and to take remedial action. For a long time, just as an example, that was the only authority that DNR had to help people who were affected by PFAS. So it's critically important, and it has worked incredibly well for over 4 decades. And now WMC has made this broad-based challenge, which if they win, would essentially wipe out the spills law. So this is a huge deal. And so the River Alliance has joined with several other groups, local organizations mainly, and represented by Midwest Environmental Advocates are part of have filed amicus briefs at all levels. We lost at the district court and the circuit court level, which was not a surprise given those courts. That case is currently before the state Supreme Court. And once again, we've filed an amicus in the state Supreme Court. That oral argument is in January, and we are hopeful that they will overturn the lower courts in that case. Another one that has bubbled up over the summer, so it's a little more recent, is from Osceola. There was housing development that I firmly believe would violate the protections of the St. Croix River wild and scenic status. The developer has challenged that. We just unfortunately recently got a not great decision from the circuit court invoking a law that was passed last session that makes it much harder for anyone to challenge any sort of housing development. And I think if that case is upheld, it is going to be really bad news, that not just for wild and scenic rivers, but for areas like the lower Wisconsin River, and any place where there are any protections to try and essentially protect a viewshed. So that's another one where we've been working with the attorneys that have been involved with that, and the plaintiffs were asking for folks to submit amicus, so we joined with Wild Rivers Conservancy and put in an amicus in the circuit court, and we now know that they have appealed to the state Supreme Court and are also going to be filing an amicus before the state Supreme Court on that case. And then finally, the other thing that I will mention, another part of the work that we do, but also just kind of elaborates on what you've heard from some of my brethren on staff. We work with a lot of groups all around the state. And so one of the things that we were hearing, given the Sackett decision and some other things, a lot of questions around some basic Clean Water Act issues. And so we partnered with the River Network, Midwest Environmental Advocates, and Wisconsin Lakes, and developed 3 online webinars, and then did an in-person session at last year's Lakes and River Convention that were aimed at the basic mechanics of how our pollution discharge system works or should work. Wetlands, post-Sackett, CAFOs, and TMDLs and non-key element plans. And we had anywhere from 15 to 30 folks at all of those, and it was quite well received. But it's another example where we listen pretty closely to what we're hearing from folks and try and fill the needs that we see and hear from them. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Evan, who is our development director.
Hey everyone, my name is Evan Arnold. I'm the development director. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us for this River Rat Chat, and for all your support as donors and volunteers and water advocates. We couldn't do the work that my colleagues have just described without people like you. So we're glad you're here. Today, as I'm sure you're aware if you've checked your email at all, is Giving Tuesday. And a group of donors, including a few people who are on this call, have agreed to match every donation made to River Alliance dollar for dollar, up to $18,000. As of about 11:45, we had raised just over 12,000. So we are still shooting for 6,000 more to meet our $18,000 match, to raise a total of $36,000 today. So I am about to put a link in the chat to our Giving Tuesday donation page. We would love your continued support. And your support goes to fund the work that my colleagues have just described. We really appreciate it. And we really appreciate you being here. I also wanted to share a few events that we have coming up in 2025, so you can get those on your calendars early. We have the Big Share, which is an online day of giving through Community Shares of Wisconsin. That's Tuesday, March 4th. Canoecopia is back again, March 7th through 9th in Madison, put on by Rutabaga Paddle Sports. It's, I think, the country's largest paddle sports exhibition. So it's a great time to see all that Rutabaga has to offer, and other water organizations just like ours. We also have Wild and Scenic Film Festival again in Madison on March 20th at the Barrymore. And as you can see in this picture here, that's from a previous Wild and Scenic. And we'll have other events coming up as well, including paddles on various rivers throughout Wisconsin. One thing we do need more help with is volunteers for events, especially our Fool's Flotilla in Madison in June. So if you're interested, feel free to send, you can send me an email or Allison or Stacey or anyone, and we can get you connected to volunteer opportunities. And I think that's all I have, so I will pass it on to Stacey, our communications director.
So hello, my name is Stacey Harbaugh, and I'm the Communications Director for River Alliance of Wisconsin. And my job is to get the word out about what we do. So I am the person behind the website, our email newsletter, and our social media presence. So really my biggest ask of you right now, and if you're on the phone call today or on the Zoom today, you're probably receiving our email newsletter. That's, I'm sure, how you heard about this event. But the most important thing is to make sure that you and all of your friends are subscribed to our Word on the Stream e-newsletter. It comes out twice a month, and our highest quality news, events, action alerts, and information about our organization, all of the updates on everything that staff have talked to you about today, that comes out in our email newsletters. It's the best way to get our news delivered directly to your inbox and to avoid the clutter of social media. I don't know if you've noticed maybe some changes in your Facebook feed or Instagram feed lately, but there's a lot of clutter and a lot of noise out there. So we can't rely on social media anymore to get the word out about what we do. So a lot of it comes in our email newsletters, and hopefully they are emails that you want to read and that you look forward to reading because it's got high quality information. The other thing I want to let you know about is that we hope to do more Water Champion stories in 2025. Here are some photos on the screen. You can see the group of paddlers there. They're women who are involved in the group Team Survivor, and they're all survivors of some kind of cancer diagnosis. So they take to the water for a healing journey to support each other and to enjoy the healing power of water and paddling. You'll also see a photo there at the bottom of Madeline McGee. She's works for the DNR's Office of Great Waters. She's an amazing science and climate change educator. And she gave us a really great interview where she talked about climate change in a very relatable way. So, you know, stories like Madeline's and the message that she has to convey, we want to get out there. And then last but not least, up at the top there, Johnson pointed out our relationship with Kathleen Smith, who works for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, otherwise known as GLFWC. She's their Manuman Ganawandeg, or She Who Takes Care of the Wild Rice. And she's just an incredible educator on wild rice and indigenous culture. And we just want everyone to meet her and to sit across from the campfire from her and listen to her stories and her perspectives on how when we protect wild rice, we protect water for everyone. She's just incredible, and she's our most recent story. You can find that on the blog section of our website, and I encourage you to go and read more about her. So if you want to see more of those Water Champion stories, you do that through your contributions, through your support of our organization, and by subscribing to our email newsletter where we'll deliver those to your inbox. So we want more of those stories. I'm also taking suggestions for water heroes around the state. You know, we don't have a big, you know, fancy black tie gala. We don't charge a lot of money for tickets for a chicken dinner in Madison, but we still want to recognize our water heroes. And if we don't give them an award or a plaque, we can at least pass the microphone to them and help them get their story out and their experiences about being water protectors in a wide variety of ways. So please let me know. Send me an email. Tell me some of the people who are working in your neck of the woods and who are doing amazing work that really needs to be acknowledged and supported and broadcast further. So we'd love to tell those stories. So I hope to see you at an event in 2025. You'll hear about them in our e-newsletter. I think that's the conclusion of our formal presentation. We'll stop the recording here in a moment and turn it into a Q&A.